There is one plant in the American perennial garden that punishes wrong decisions faster and more severely than almost anything else you can grow. One bad cut at the wrong time of year removes every flower it was planning to produce for the next 12 months. 1 week of dry soil against a wall while the top of the plant looks perfectly fine can silently destroy a root system that took 3 seasons to establish. And one misidentification, treating a plant like one pruning group when it belongs to another, can set a well-established clematis back by a full growing year. That plant is Clematis. And July, specifically the final 2 weeks of July, is the most consequential month of the entire growing calendar for every clematis in your garden. Most American gardeners approach clematis in July one of 2 ways. They see it getting large and tangled and make an aggressive cut to tidy it up, not knowing whether that cut just removed the stems that were carrying next spring's flowers, or they leave it completely alone and assume it will sort itself out, not knowing that the soil against the wall it is growing on has been bone dry for 3 weeks while the top of the vine looked perfectly healthy. Both decisions carry real costs. Both are completely preventable with the right information applied in the right sequence. Today I am giving you exactly what every clematis in your garden needs before July ends. And I am starting with the single most important decision that determines whether everything else you do helps or hurts. Drop your US state or USDA zone in the comments right now. Clematis care in July is significantly different in Zone 4 Michigan than Zone 8 Georgia. And I want to make sure what I tell you today actually applies where you are growing. I read every single one. Let's go. Step 1. Identify your pruning group before you touch a single stem. This is the non-negotiable starting point for every clematis decision in July. Not because it is complicated, because without it, every action you take is a guess, and a wrong guess with clematis in July costs you flowers for the next 12 months. Every clematis belongs to one of 3 pruning groups: Group 1, Group 2, or Group 3. The group is not arbitrary. It is determined by when the plant flowers, and whether it produces flowers on old stems grown last season or new stems grown this season. Those 2 facts determine everything about when and how you prune it. Group 1, Clematis, the early spring flowering types including Montana, Alpina, and Macropetala, bloom on stems they produced last year. By July, those same stems are already developing the growth that will carry next spring's flowers. If you make a significant cut to a Group 1 plant in late July, you are removing the flowering wood for the following spring. The plant will not rebloom from that wood. It will need to regenerate entirely from scratch. Group 1 in July means removing only dead, broken, or diseased growth. Nothing more. Group 2, Clematis, the large flowered hybrids like Nellie Moser, the President, and Dr. Rappel that produced spectacular May and June blooms, are the plants that actually need specific July attention. These varieties can produce a second flush of smaller blooms in late summer on new growth they produce after the first flush finishes. To encourage that second flush, lightly shorten the stems that have already flowered, cutting back to a strong side shoot or a healthy pair of buds just below the faded flowers. Not every stem, not to the ground. Only the stems that have already finished their first bloom, cut back to the next active growing point below. Group 3 Clematis. The summer and fall flowering types, including Polish Spirit, Princess Diana, and the Viticella varieties, are either approaching or already in their main bloom period in July. Hard pruning a Group 3 plant right now removes the growth carrying every flower it is planning to produce through August and September. Group 3 in July means tying in new growth, watering deeply, and leaving every flowering stem exactly where it is. Here is the identification shortcut for any clematis you cannot identify by name. When did it bloom? Bloomed mainly in spring on old woody stems. Group 1. Produced large flowers in May and June, and may repeat. Group 2. Main flowering is happening now in July, or is coming in August and September. Group 3. That sequence identifies the group correctly in most situations without needing to know the variety name. Tell me in the comments right now, do you know which pruning group your clematis belongs to? Drop your state and tell me what variety you are growing if you know it. I read every single one. Step 2. Water the root zone deeply, not the plant you can see. This is the most underestimated July task for Clematis in America, and the one that causes the most silent damage. Clematis growing against walls, fences, house foundations, and under roof overhangs are frequently in some of the driest soil in the entire garden, even when the rest of the garden has received adequate rain. A wall deflects rain. A roof overhang creates a dry zone, several feet wide at the base. Tree roots from nearby mature trees compete aggressively for every drop of moisture that does reach the root zone. The clematis vine growing up that wall can look completely healthy, green, vigorous, actively growing, while the soil around its roots has been dry for 2 to 3 weeks. By the time the vine shows stress symptoms above ground, the root system has already been under serious moisture deprivation for longer than you realize. Watering the base of a clematis in July means deep, slow watering at the soil level that penetrates the root zone rather than wetting only the top inch before evaporating. Apply water slowly enough that it penetrates rather than running away from the surface. Move the water across the wider root area rather than only against the central stem. Confirm penetration by checking the soil at depth after watering. Push a screwdriver or narrow trowel 6 to 8 inches into the root zone. If it comes out with dry soil on it, you did not water deeply enough and the plant did not receive what you thought you gave it. Container clematis require daily checking in July heat. A clematis in a pot on a sunny porch or south-facing wall can exhaust its available soil moisture within 24 hours during peak summer temperatures. Check every morning. Water whenever the soil is dry below the top inch. Never fertilize a dry container. Water it first. Wait until the moisture has moved through the root zone, then feed. If you are not subscribed, yet hit that button right now. This channel releases real zone-specific perennial knowledge every single week. Free. 2 seconds. Do it now. Step 3. Refresh the mulch layer and keep it away from the crown. The root zone of a clematis benefits from cool, evenly moist soil conditions through the hottest months of the American summer. 2 to 3 inches of organic mulch across the root zone delivers 3 outcomes simultaneously. It moderates soil temperature, reduces the evaporation rate between waterings significantly, and suppresses the weeds that compete directly with clematis roots for the moisture and nutrition the plant needs. The familiar instruction that clematis wants its head in the sun and its feet in the shade is essentially a mulching recommendation expressed poetically. The vine flowers best with adequate sun. The root zone performs best when it stays cooler and more consistently moist than exposed bare soil provides. Mulch achieves the second half of that requirement reliably and at almost no cost. The critical rule that determines whether mulching helps or harms. Keep the mulch several inches away from the central stems and crown of the plant. Mulch piled directly against the crown traps moisture against the stem tissue at the most vulnerable point, creating the warm, moist anaerobic conditions that crown rot and fungal pathogens develop in. The mulch belongs on the surrounding soil, not against the plant itself. Step 4. Tie in new growth before it becomes a tangled mass. Clematis climbs by wrapping its leaf stalks around whatever support it contacts. Thin wires, mesh, and trellis work perfectly. Thick fence boards, masonry walls, and large, smooth posts cannot be gripped at all without added support structure. If your clematis is growing against a surface that does not provide grip points, the vine is depending entirely on whatever ties and training you provide. And in July, the amount of new growth that needs guidance accumulates fast. By late July, vigorous clematis stems can extend several feet beyond their last support point and become tangled with each other, top-heavy, and vulnerable to wind damage. A stem that breaks where it connects to the main framework in late July is a stem that was carrying either current or future flowers. That break is preventable with 15 minutes of tying once per week during peak growth. Spread new stems sideways and upward across the support structure, rather than allowing them all to pile upward into a dense mass at the top. A clematis trained this way distributes flowers across the full extent of the support, produces better air circulation throughout the vine, which reduces disease pressure, and is dramatically easier to manage at pruning time than a vine that has been left to tangle itself for an entire season. Use soft garden ties that allow room for stems to expand. Avoid thin wire, plastic cord, or anything that binds tightly against the stem. Clematis stems are more brittle than they look, and a tie that cuts into growing tissue creates a wound that disease can enter. Hit the like button right now. Every like tells YouTube this content is worth showing to American gardeners who are going to make a wrong clematis cut this July because nobody explained the pruning groups clearly before they reached for their shears. 1 tap. Step 5. Recognize clematis wilt and act the same day you see it. Clematis wilt is not what most gardeners think it is when they first encounter it. A clematis that droops in the afternoon of a hot July day is almost certainly showing heat and moisture stress, not wilt. The drooping is temporary. Water the root zone and the vine recovers by the following morning. True clematis wilt looks completely different. A single previously healthy stem collapses suddenly, not drooping gradually, but collapsing within hours. The collapsed stem and its leaves darken, sometimes turning black or developing purple discoloration along the leaf veins. The collapse happens rapidly. A stem that was carrying developing buds in the morning can be black and dead by evening. Adjacent stems on the same plant remain completely healthy while the affected stem is clearly dead. When you see these symptoms act the same day, cut the affected stem below the visibly diseased tissue. Follow it downward until you reach tissue that looks and feels healthy and make the cut there. If the collapse extends to the base of the plant, cut at or just below soil level. Dispose of the affected material. Do not leave it lying beneath the vine where spores can splash back onto the remaining growth. Clean your pruning tools with undiluted hydrogen peroxide before touching any other plant. Remove accumulated dead leaves and debris from around the crown where the pathogen can persist. Do not cultivate deeply around the root zone, which creates wounds that the disease can enter. Here is the important information most clematis content stops before saying. A plant that collapses to the base from wilt is not necessarily dead. Clematis roots are significantly more resilient than the above-ground portion of the vine. Many plants that lose all their top growth to wilt regenerate from the root system during the following season. Mark the location. Leave the root system undisturbed. Wait until the following spring before concluding the plant is gone. Subscribe right now if you have not already. Hit the bell. This channel releases content every single week that gives you the specific information you need at the specific moment you need it in your perennial garden. Make sure the next video finds you. Step 6. Check for pests and manage them correctly during bloom. July brings aphids to clematis growing tips, earwigs to the flowers, slugs and snails to the lower stems, and new growth, and capsid bugs that leave irregularly shaped brown-edged holes in the leaves. Each of these pests is manageable in a home garden without chemical sprays on open flowers, which is the critical constraint during July when clematis blooms are being actively worked by pollinators at every hour of the day. Aphids cluster on young shoot tips and the undersides of tender new growth. Inspect every new shoot tip weekly. A small aphid colony in its early stages can be removed by hand or washed off with a strong stream of water from the hose. Left until the colony is established across multiple growing points, the management effort required multiplies significantly. Slug and snail damage appears at the base of the plant. Ragged, irregular holes in lower leaves, and damage to young stems emerging from the crown. Go out with a flashlight 1 hour after dark when slugs and snails are actively feeding and remove them by hand. 3 consecutive evenings of this during active damage periods eliminates a significant portion of the local population before it establishes fully. Never apply broad-spectrum insecticide to a clematis in full bloom. The bees and other pollinators visiting those flowers are exposed to any chemical applied to the plant regardless of what the label specifies as the target pest. Physical removal and targeted contact treatments applied to the specific infested area, not broadcast across the entire vine, are the correct July pest management approach for a flowering clematis. Here is the complete late July clematis plan before you go. Identify your pruning group before making any cut. Spring flowering is group 1. Large flowered repeat blooming is group 2. Summer and fall flowering is group 3. Group 1 in July means removing only dead and damaged growth. Group 2 means lightly shortening flowered stems to strong side shoots or buds. Group 3 means hands off the pruning shears completely. Water deeply and slowly at root level. Not the vine you can see, but the soil the roots are actually living in. Check soil moisture. At depth after watering, container plants need daily checking in July heat. Refresh mulch to 2 to 3 inches across the root zone. Keep it away from the crown and stems. Tie in new growth weekly. Spread stems sideways and upward to distribute flowers and improve airflow. Recognize true wilt by the sudden collapse and darkening of individual stems, not afternoon drooping, which is heat and moisture stress. Cut affected stems below the disease line the same day. Clean tools before moving to the next plant. Manage pests physically during bloom. No broad-spectrum sprays on open flowers. Do not hard prune an unidentified clematis in July. Do not fertilize with high nitrogen in late July when the plant should be transitioning toward cold hardiness preparation. Do not pile mulch against the crown. Do not assume a plant wilted to the base is dead. Wait until spring. July is not the month to renovate your clematis. It is the month to protect it, water it correctly, guide its growth, and make the specific targeted cuts that determine whether the second flush of flowers materializes and whether the plant enters August healthy enough to carry that momentum through to fall. Drop 2 things in the comments before you go. What state or zone are you gardening in? And which pruning group does your clematis belong to? I read every single comment. Your answers shape the next video directly. Now go identify your pruning group before you touch a single stem.